Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for attending this side event of Vienna Energy 2021 on small hydropower. I would like to brief you UNIDO's role, functions, and achievement in the field of small hydropower.
We can see your title slide.
So UNIDO is the specialized agency of the United Nations that promotes industrial development for poverty reduction, inclusive globalization, and environmental sustainability. The mission of UNIDO is to promote and accelerate inclusive and sustainable industrial development in developing countries and economies in transition. Renewable is one of key functions of UNIDO for industrialization. As one of renewable energies, promoting small hydropower development worldwide is one of key UNIDO's energy mandates. Cooperating with the partners, including International Center on Small Hydropower, regional centers on small hydropower in India, Nigeria, as well as Global Network for Sustainable Energy Centers, UNIDO plays a key role and leading role for small hydropower development worldwide. Some key activities and achievements, such as World Small Hydropower Development Report. It was initiated in year 2013, and it has been updated each 3 years. The report included global small hydropower potentials, installations, and country policies and barriers, etc. Our panelist, Oksana, will present detail on the latest findings. Another achievement is technical guideline for small hydropower plant development, including participation of more than 40 international organizations and 80 international experts. The technical guideline provided principles and guidance for identification of plans, feasibility study, design, operation, and management for small hydropower. Part of this guideline has been updated to ISO standards. So Professor Arun Kumar, as a co-chairperson of the IWA 33, will present it in detail today. So furthermore, through Global Environment Facility and other donors' support, many mini and small hydropower projects has been constructed in developing countries, such as in Cameroon, India, Kenya, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Tanzania, and Zambia. This project greatly improved source cooperation for small hydropower and productive use to support industrialization. From this slide, you can see two photos. One is left one is Zambia project. Another one is in Nigeria. In order to increase small hydropower impact and based on the experiences in the last decades, currently UNIDO is cooperating with ICHP and many other partners on development of small hydropower services using water energy. Here is, we can see, ongoing project. China, Burundi, Madagascar, Nigeria, and global for scaling up small hydropower development in selected countries to contribute to inclusive and sustainable industrial development. So for all these projects are going on, we are working together with the partners from member states and also with ICP. And this is in order to development of small hydropower service package. That's a way forward in the future, what we are going to do. So currently, UNIDO is cooperating with ICP and development of small hydropower service package using water, energy, and food approaches. As we believe, small hydropower not only bring opportunities for energy access, but also contribute for water and water resource and management, irrigation, and food security. The service include three categories. So from here we can see capacity building, technology deployment, and investment and market development. So for tentatively, it has been break down to 6 modulars. So modular 1 is assessment and demand analysis, and modular 2 is policy support and institutional strengthening, and modular 3 is capacity building, and modular 4 is scaling up small hydropower project, and modular 5 is financing investment and also investment de-risking. The modular 6 is communication and outreach. So of course, with UNIDO leading role, but we also need the cooperation worldwide. So from here, we can see the service package will be applied for global small hydropower development, especially in the developing world. We hope as many as possible partners can join us, including think technology entities, consulting firms, finance and investment, and regional and local partners. We hope through our joint efforts, we can achieve our common goals in the future. So thank you very much. This is just my brief introduction about UNIDO's functions and achievement for small hydropower in the last decades. Thank you.
Lou, thank you very much. I think that was quite a concise overview of a very significant piece of work that's being done. Secondly, I'd like to hand over to Oksana Lopatina, the Senior Program Officer at the International Center on Small Hydropower, to give us share some of the findings of the the World Small Hydro Development Report. Oksana.
Thank you, Anton Louis. I'm just going to try to share my my slide. Okay, it's working fine, right? Hello, everyone. It's great to have an opportunity to take part in this discussion and to present to you all the findings of the World Small Hydropower Development Report 2019, which unfortunately we didn't manage to do last year because of COVID. So the World Small Hydropower Development Report 2019 was the third edition of this publication that is aiming to provide a comprehensive global overview of small hydropower development. The same as the first two editions, which were published, as Professor Liu mentioned, in 2013 and 2016, it was prepared by ICSHP and UNIDO in collaboration with local and international experts and organizations from across the globe. The 2019 edition brought together information provided by over 200 experts, including Professor Kumar, and covers 166 countries that have operational small hydropower sectors or have potential for developing small hydropower. By summarizing the collected information on small hydropower by country, the report offers us a good overview of the current status of the small hydropower technology in the world and across regions. Based on the most recent data available by country at the moment of writing of the report and following the definition of small hydropower as plants up to 10 megawatts, the report estimates that globally there is a total installed small hydropower capacity of approximately 78 gigawatts. Compared to the early edition, which was published in 2016, this indicates an increase of 10%, and most of this development has taken place in Asia and Europe. It should be noted, however, that this 78 gigawatts total doesn't include a number of countries that have very developed small hydropower sectors, but for which data on small hydropower up to 10 megawatts is not available because they use other definitions, for example, India and Brazil. So we can quite safely assume that the actual total installed capacity in the world of small hydropower up to 10 megawatts should be at least a few gigawatts higher. So we roughly have 78 gigawatts of installed capacity. On the other hand, the total available potential is estimated in the report to be approximately 229 gigawatts. This is the estimate of the global known small hydropower potential, including the developed capacity. And this suggests that of the available potential, roughly 34% has been developed so far, and there remains over 150 gigawatts of untapped potential. As the numbers suggest, more than half of this potential is concentrated in Asia and around 25% in the Americas. At the same time, the African continent, including the countries with the lowest electricity access levels, account for only 6% of the remaining small hydropower potential. However, while looking at these numbers, it is important to emphasize that the countries that could benefit most from electricity access through small hydropower technology, including countries in sub-Saharan Africa, often also tend to lack accurate and comprehensive data on the potential of their small rivers, or there have been no studies undertaken at all. Actually, data access is one of the key barriers to small hydropower development still today, and not only in the developing countries, even in the European context, where overall the small hydropower sector has a long history and is well established. Data on the potential can be based on outdated, decades-old studies, which might not take into account the new technological developments, as well as the changes in precipitation and runoff patterns due to the climate crisis. Overall, global small hydropower accounts for slightly more than 1% of total installed capacity in the world, with even a smaller share in Africa, the Americas, and Oceania. However, despite this small share in the energy mix, small hydropower has proved to play a very important role in improving the quality of life of numerous communities worldwide, allowing them to replace polluting and expensive diesel generators with clean electricity from hydropower, or even bringing down the first ever access to electricity. And this has been particularly important for remote rural areas where communities often remain marginalized due to the lack of access to electricity and the high costs of connecting to the main grid. The 2019 edition of the report for the first time included case studies from a range of countries, for example, Pakistan, the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, which demonstrates how well-planned and well-managed small hydropower can strengthen local institutions, improve access to education and healthcare services, empower women and girls, create jobs, and help alleviate poverty. Of course, it's not possible to cover all the details of a 1,000-page report in just 7 minutes. So I would like to invite you all to check out the 2019 edition, including the case study section, which you can find on UNIDO website, and maybe we can share the link in the chat. And before I wrap up, I would like to give you a sneak peek into the 4th edition, which we're currently working on, and which is to be published next year. Traditionally, it will provide an update on the small hydropower capacities around the world by country and by regions. But we also aim to include new information which was not covered in the earlier editions. Thus, it will include details that should be useful for potential small hydropower developers, such as the costs of small hydropower development and by country, and also sources of funding that are available in each country, and also lists of projects available for investment. We're also aiming to compile a global database of existing and potential small hydropower projects, which will be the first international database of this kind. And last but not least, the forthcoming edition will give an overview of the impacts of the climate crisis on the sector, which already proved to be very significant in many countries. And we hope that this broadened structure of the new edition will be useful to the developers and decision makers, and will also encourage a more systemic and active discussion on sustainable development of the sector. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions about the report, I will be very happy to address them.
Thanks very much, Oksana. The figure that you mentioned there of the untapped potential of about 150 gigawatts is quite interesting. The IHA, International Energy Agency, estimates we need about 850 gigawatts in total of hydropower. Now, if only half of the 150 gigawatts that you mentioned are realizable, it means that the small hydro can still contribute something like 10% to this global target that we need to achieve decarbonized power sectors. But thanks very much. I'd now like to hand over to Prof. Arun Kumar, who will give us an introduction to the technical guidelines that UNIDO has published on small hydropower and the role that they play. Prof. Kumar.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity for sharing this. 1 second, please. It is there.
Kumar, we can see, no, we could see your screen, but it wasn't in presentation mode.
No, it was in, yeah, I need to do in a presentation mode. I have seen it. Do I have to do it before?
Something's happening.
Is it okay now?
See your screen. We can see your screen, but it is not the presentation mode yet.
All right.
And while Kumar is looking for to figuring out the technology, please note that in the chat we've shared the link to the World Small Hydro Development Report that Oksana was referring to.
I'm sorry about it, and I.
Maybe just proceed with that view that you've got, Kumar.
Okay, that's better. That's better. Are you able to see now something? No?
Nope.
Okay. Then I will go with that, whatever you could see, that's better. Otherwise, nothing, I'll delay it. You know.
Let's see. Yes, we can see the screen. You can proceed like that. Thank you.
All right. You see, thank you very much, UNIDO, for this opportunity to share on the side event, which is happening here on this occasion of Vienna Energy Forum. We're talking about the guidelines for small hydropower. Small hydropower guidelines are, I'm very sorry about it. I can't help it, except that I had to retrieve it. And I am very sorry about it. Again, what to do with this? Okay, I go by the side of it. And so this is what I can do. And if I do this way, I can share the screen. And if I screen share, then I go like this. I never had any this kind of problem, so it's gone. Anyway, I like to talk like this only. See, the technical standards are required for small hydropower development, for the comprehensive development of these smaller units of development. See, the traditional specialized hydropower suppliers and the contractors which are involved in the large-scale hydropower are being replaced by the newcomers, which are much experience and expertise. As Anton has said, that most of the small hydropower, it is in the private sector, and it's a newcomer, even the first level entrepreneurs are there. Hence, the decision and contractual relationship between plant operators, engineers, contractors, and supplier is required, and these standards help. The standard guides on SHP can alleviate some of the problems due to the new technical needs and the dispersion of expertise creates. User standard is wholly voluntary, though extended when I have a standard of guideline, that does not imply that there are no other ways to do. The careful environmental studies actually can make SHP one of the best compromise between energy demand and the impacts. Both large scale requires a good environmental careful. Standardization guidelines leads to uniformity. Please understand that a small scale, which are in the remote area, in the hilly areas, often requires certain uniformity in the design manufacture, because each and everybody cannot be there at site, not like large hydro. Hence, this uniformity is required, and that can come to the guidelines. It can lead to a safer and better operation and maintenance. Equipments with the supplied and works executed must be as per the standard and specification. And the provision of the state government and the local statutes or rules or codes which are applicable are to be adhered to. The ISO, the IC, the IEEE, United States Bureau of Emissions, and several national standards are in practice. for its national for the small scale hydro. And in fact, now the UNIDO has come out with a about 25 standards which are available, and that is where I would like to say it's one of the a good beginning on that. Small hydropower is to be cost effective, and it's a long-term investment opportunity for which you require quality and reliability of power station. We should also remember that in small hydropower, we have a multitasker. We cannot afford to have a specialist for everything. Here, the people are to be, so for that, these standards or guidelines helps a lot. Private sector somehow developing most of the small scale hydropower. Majority of the small hydropower plant has been providing or has been used to provide electricity to the mini grids in the remote areas, which are in the often hilly and where a grid push nowadays has come up, and that becomes, many projects have become now commercial projects. The village scale mini hydro on the basis of a small hydro have been developed, particularly in China, Nepal, India, etc., where these have powered not only the electricity for the rural household, but also smallest industries providing substantial local income and jobs. And thus, standard equipments coupled with uniform works and construction practices can bring significant economy, reliability, and pace in small hydropower development. I also would like to mention that Department of Hydro and Renewable Energy at IIT Roorkee in India, for which I belong, has been about a 42-year-old in a 174 real institutes. It has a lot of database. It has a real-time simulator for training. It has got a testing for the turbine efficiency testing laboratories. It has a field testing performance evaluation. It also conducts national and international training, and it also prepared 27 national guidelines standard which are available on the on the website. So with this, I would like to say thank you very much for this opportunity, and we will be very happy to take the question on the standards and guidelines, because these are must today, since it's their first level, local level entrepreneurs are doing the small scale hydropower, and even the conventional hydropower suppliers are not in this, so hence this standard guidelines helped a lot. Thank you with this. Over to you, Anton.
There you go. Thank you very much, Kumar. The context of providing energy for more than just household use, I think, is critical. I just saw today again a report where the Kenyan utility is struggling with the extremely low consumption of power in some of its rural areas, where households use less than 6 kilowatt hours per month, effectively phone charging and a bit of lighting. And in many areas where we're seeing those type of services being provided by small solar systems, there's no scope for any productive use beyond that. And I think that's where hydropower can really come to its own. But lastly, I'd like to hand over to Janice Goodenough from Hydrogrid, who will inform us of some of the challenges that you face in modernizing and digitizing what is a quite old technology by itself. Janice, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, first of all, for UNIDO for the very important work that Oksana and Eva have been doing on this small hydropower report. It has been an invaluable source of information for us as a company, and I think for the industry as a whole. So thank you for that. I can fully support the opening statement that Anton Luis gave in the beginning about the fact that hydropower in some ways is actually the hero of the energy transition, but it suffers from a lack of lobby and it suffers from a lack of positive marketing compared specifically to wind and solar power as kind of the new renewable energy technologies. And I will support that opinion today with some facts and figures about how hydropower and specifically digitalized small hydropower has a crucial role to play towards achieving a zero carbon economy. So one thing that I think is without question is achieving a zero carbon economy hinges on power generation. So energy generation accounts for about 70% of all the, let's say, CO2 emissions that we have in the world. And for this reason, solving the topic of CO2-free energy generation will be key to a sustainable future. But as mentioned before, right, hydropower is actually the largest source of renewable energy generation that we have today. But if you were looking at the media, you would think it quite otherwise. You would think that wind and solar are the lion's share of renewable generation. But actually hydropower dwarfs both wind and solar, even despite the large build out of wind and solar power over the last few years. And a significant part of this hydropower potential and current generation comes from small hydropower, specifically from plants under 10 megawatts. So hydropower has a crucial role to play, but not only because hydropower is, in terms of volume, such a large source of renewable power, but also because in terms of its technical ability, it has some additional advantages compared to wind and solar power. Specifically, as we all know, wind and solar power are intermittent renewables, which means we cannot decide when the wind is going to blow and the sun is going to shine. And there are quite strong variations in the generation. And these strong variations pose critical problems, both for the grids that have to deal with this new changing and intermittent load, but also for the power markets, and as a consequence to power producers, including small hydropower producers. So if, as a total economy, we want to achieve zero carbon generation, we don't only have to make sure that we create enough carbon-free energy, but we also have to store, or we also have to solve the storage problem. So we need to find a way to take all this carbon-free energy intermittently from wind and solar, store it away, and then pass it back to the grid and to the consumer when it is most needed. And as of right now, there are only a limited number of technologies which allow us to store energy, whether it be renewable or not. And those are hydropower, traditional batteries, demand response, and there are, of course, also some new technologies like power to gas and new battery technologies that people are working on. The crucial point here, though, is that all of these storage technologies have some pros and cons. Specifically, hydro storage is the only technology that, on the one hand side, allows to store large volumes of energy, to give that large volume of energy back when it is most needed by the consumers in the country, that is able to give back this energy very rapidly, and that has somewhat of a consistent generation throughout the year. So with solar power, we have, of course, a very strong variation between summer and winter. And with wind, we have the problem that there can be extended periods up to 2 weeks where we have almost zero generation. Compared to hydro storage, all other technologies for storing energy have some significant downsides. Of course, hydro storage also has one main downside, which is it's not possible everywhere. So to solve this problem, we're going to need a mix of different kind of storage technologies working together to come up with the optimal mix that allows to cover all the needs. And this is where, again, small hydropower has an important role to play, because we have about 80,000 small hydropower plants in the world, and many of these are not really in the digital age as of yet, meaning they don't have the control system ability, the software, the hardware set up to be able to react quickly to power market signals or to signals from the grid operator on when energy generation is needed. And if they have some generation flexibility, such as a storage plant, to also use that storage in the optimal way to support the grid and the consumer. And that's a bit our mission at Hydrogrid to change this. We have done a very, very rough back of the envelope calculation, what it might mean if all these small hydropower plants were able to come to the digital age, specifically when it comes to storage potential compared to other alternatives. And we calculated that bringing only these small hydropower plants that have some flexibility potential to the digital age would unlock about 1.5 terawatt hours of storage volume to the grid, which is equivalent to about 100 million Tesla Powerwall batteries. Those are those little batteries that you can put in your garage of your home. So when you think about this, right, think about the investment needed to equip 100 million households with such a storage pack in the garage, and also think about the upfront investments, but also the rare earths and minerals that will have to be mined and the upfront costs associated with that, and also the ecological costs associated with that, compared to the existing stock of small hydropower, which only needs to be upgraded in terms of basically software functionality to provide the same benefit. So this is why I think it's quite straightforward to see that hydropower needs a lot better lobbying and a lot better funding for projects such as these. To give one specific example here, we've calculated with one of our clients that by using real-time intelligent dispatch, this client was able to increase the generation from their small hydropower plant by 9%. And this increase in generation comes from an increase in turbine efficiency and better water management, basically. So from the same amount of water, we're creating a higher amount of carbon-free electricity. And this amount within 1 year came up to 350 tons of CO2 emissions saved. So I think this, and again, it's, as Oksana said, it's not possible to go into all the details of this topic, obviously, in 7 minutes. But what this highlights is that digitalization will be a key part to helping hydropower become the hero that it was meant to be in terms of supporting a transition to a renewable energy future. And it also shows the crucial role that we have to put not only in building out new small hydropower, which is very important, as Oksana has pointed out, there is a large amount of untapped potential there that should be lifted, but also to take the existing fleet and bringing it to a modern world. So thank you, and I will give back to Anton Louis.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you. I'd like to use this opportunity, which I should have done earlier, really just to invite questions from all our participants. I see if we go onto the list of who's everybody's been joining us, there's a considerable list of people joining us. Please feel free to post questions. There is a Q&A function and also in the chat. And my colleagues at UNIDO, Eva said she'll assist with collating the questions that we can present to the panel. While we are waiting for questions to come in, we still got a couple of minutes left. I'd like to just start off from my side with some questions, and I think if I can start with Janice, since you had to wait last on our panel, can you maybe identify some of the and discuss some of the challenges and opportunities that you're facing in actually converting what is in some ways a very conservative industry, where people have been, running small hydropower plants for many years. I've personally visited plants where it's second generation owners and operators. To get 9% of extra yield out of something like that would be quite astounding. But can you maybe advise us maybe a little bit on how actually can modern technology help, and how do you overcome these barriers to get digitalization into this industry?
Yeah, you're perfectly right. So the industry has been around for a long time, and it has been doing a very good job at producing renewable power for a long time, but it's not an industry that is very quick to change. When you compare with other industries like telecommunications, automotive, they have been much quicker to adapt kind of to the digital era. I think this is a combination of many factors, as you have said, sometimes multi-generational process development, right? I think it's an industry that is very focused on security, and that sometimes also is an impediment to changing things quickly. So what we have seen in our practice is that operators just want to see others doing it first, right? But once they see others in their country, in their kind of community, switching to digital processes, then they are actually very, very quick to change and to use tools such as Hydrogrid Insight, but also other solutions with regards to predictive maintenance that maybe help them support their maintenance process, or also in the building process using some digital tools. To a certain degree,
Janice, what about pricing mechanisms, where traditionally, you've only been paid for kilowatt hours, irrespective of when you generate it?
Exactly.
And what we're seeing in more sophisticated markets, for example, in Europe, where there's virtual power plants that's got close to 9 gigawatts made up of a bunch of small individual ones, but they are able to value ancillary services, balancing services, and so forth. Is that part of what your technology can offer?
Exactly. That would have been that's exactly my second point. So feed-in tariffs and subsidy schemes that exist in many parts of the world for small hydropower are a bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to digitalization. So they're a positive thing, obviously, because they support new build of small hydropower, but they are a hindrance towards digitalization, specifically if feed-in tariffs are designed in such a way that they do not at all value flexibility, so that it's just a one basically lump fixed sum, and that takes away the market signals to the hydropower producers to digitalize, to invest in new processes. So this is why we strongly encourage policymakers to, yes, support hydropower and specifically small hydropower, because also wind and solar is getting a lot of support, but make that some support come with the necessary market signals. And in those countries where the market signals are there, we see a much faster adoption of new digital technologies like our own software, but also others. And there's a huge divide here between, for instance, countries like the Nordics, Norway, Sweden, Finland, which are fully liberalized for all market segments, and countries that have these fixed feed-in tariffs.
Thank you. Now, personally, I can't emphasize this enough. If we don't move hydropower into the digital era, when the solar and wind are fully digitized, we're going to end up with sectors where the utilities demand certain responses from power plants, and if hydropower is not able to deliver in the same way, the same type of responses that some of the more modern technologies can give, then hydropower will continue to be neglected and the role will be diminished. Oksana, if I can move over to you in that same theme, what barriers to small hydropower development have you identified through your assessments and as summarized in your report?
Yeah, so there are a lot of barriers to small hydropower development, which vary by country and by region. Obviously, the barriers that countries in the European context face are very different from barriers in the developing world. In Europe, small hydropower sectors sometimes see overdevelopment and create too much pressure on the ecosystems. In the developing world, where small hydropower technologies can actually bring most benefits to communities, there is a lack of access to technologies, to expertise, to local skills, which makes small hydropower development very expensive and dependent on external funding and external technologies. So there is a gap between where technologies, knowledge, and best practices exist and where there is actually demand for small hydropower technologies. This obviously calls for expanding and intensifying international and regional cooperation in the sector. And in the vein of the discussion about standards, obviously the lack of standards, particularly in developing countries, is a huge barrier. particularly in the long run, because it can lead to uncontrolled development, which can have an incredible impact on ecosystems and then lead to very negative public opinions towards small hydropower. For example, in Vietnam a few years ago, hundreds of small hydropower projects were cancelled because of the bad planning and great impact on the environment. So this in a nutshell.
Thank you. Arun, I see you very busy on the chat line answering questions there, so I'll leave you to do that for a moment. We appreciate that, and I'll move over to Liu. If you could maybe expand a bit, you touched on it in your earlier presentation on the strategy that UNIDO is pursuing to promoting small hydropower development globally.
Thank you. Yes, UNIDO made great efforts for small hydropower development worldwide, especially in the last decades in Africa. However, just as Oksana mentioned, currently we are still facing big challenges and barriers for scaling up small hydropower in developing countries, such as a lack of qualified technicians, technologies, financing and investment, manufacturing capacity and standard technical guidelines, etc. So really we meet some challenges and we really need to do more. What we are doing are part of UNIDO's strategies, including such as capacity building, technology transfer, and standard development, especially for pilot project construction, in African countries. So now what we are doing is to prepare a service package of small hydropower. This could be said is another trial to standardize the service based on different demands. Because for different countries, they may have quite different conditions, and also they may just request part of this service. So we hope this service package will give the opportunities for us and also for our partners working together. So anyhow, in the future, we will continue to work together with partners and counterparts, international and national partners, to develop small hydropower program. So not only just a pilot project should be program, especially using the water, energy, and food approaches, which will be made de-risking of investment and increase small hydropower impacts. So now we can say development of small hydropower program, and also for providing a sufficient service package for partners, for the member states. That will be our efforts in the future. So I hope this will give what you concern. Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned an interesting point about a lack of technicians. Some comments that I've been getting, and again relating to the theme of digitization, is that some of the manufacturers have actually expressed concerns that they of starting to find difficulty in recruiting qualified staff. And essentially that the barrier that they're facing is that engineering or technical staff are trained to move into a digital world. And if you are not able to offer them that type of context in hydropower, then it's not seen as an attractive place to build a career. And then also something that you mentioned, and I think Professor Kumar also mentioned it earlier, and I'd like to put this to the panel. It's a question that comes up from somebody also very well known in the small hydropower sector, Wim Jonker-Kloene, is about what he terms hydro in a box. It relates to standardization with equipment pre-installed in containers and then transported to site. Is that something that you think has any life in it, or will hydropower also always be very much a local designed, local optimized solution? Arun.
Yes, thank you very much. This box thing is, we call it compact. And compact turbines or units are not new, but it is kind of for the last 3 decades, I'm seeing they are called compact units. But the only thing is the box and compact, the difference is that you also have a civil works ready in terms of foundation, in terms of its box, in terms of penstock, etc. I do see that this kind of a complete box kind of things has got limited applications and limited numbers in it, because many times things are site specific, whereas compact units, and in fact I would like to say our example from China is that we have a compact standard products and you can apply with a little bit minor here there. So I would say the compact units are very much over there, but not as a complete package from A to B, like civil works, everything. So that has limited scope.
Thank you.
I also like to just add, Anton just given about this technician and this one. The thing is, most of the small hydro scale is in the remote areas, hilly areas, where accessibility to the basic things are not there, where people from the urban area do not move to that side. So it is basically one need to have the capacity building of the locals. If you do not build the capacity of the locals, then this issue of deficit of skilled manpower will always be there. So it is always good that you need to build the capacity of the locals, which it, and then once you build up the capacity to the local to a large extent, your problems of O&M, operation maintenance, and those things are much reduced. If you do not do that, you then for every nut and bolt, people keep on waiting for others to come.
No, very much. We all know that the Congress of the Parties, the COP talks are due in November this year. And we got a question from Maria Ubierna, a colleague from International Hydropower Association, that says that the COP talks are not only focused on mitigation, but also resilience and adaptation. And maybe if Oksana or Liu, if you could comment on if UNIDO is also looking at the resilience and adaptation of that small-scale hydro can provide.
Thank you. Yes, UNIDO is not only working on this resilience, for the mitigation, but also adaptation. Now, currently, we are working on some proposals for adaptation fund for some adaptation measures. So for small hydropower development. So, for example, in some international river basin or transboundary river basins, we would like to through the water resource management for flood forecasting and combining with the small hydropower development to using the small hydropower for the electricity access, but also adaptation for the climate change through water resources and management. So such kind of course, will not just say for small hydropower for energy access, but also other purpose. So that is what we are going to do. So especially through global climate fund, green climate fund, and also green environmental facilities, and also adaptation fund. So through these ways. So now, but of course, we also would like to cooperate with our international partners to working together for the small hydropower sector for adaptation in worldwide. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liu. Then last question before I will wrap up, which comes from Andreas Almeida, who would like you to comment on what the small hydropower sector can do to avoid negative environmental impacts, that ecological or social impacts that we've seen sometimes being associated with hydropower projects. Anybody who can we?
Yeah, I would like to inform. See, people have seen the large-scale hydropower where the environmental impacts are much more visible, because you move a lot of people and then you also go for a more large scale of deforestation. In case of a small scale hydropower, since they are relatively smaller in size, and in their impacts are, most of them are run-of-river schemes. They do not go for storage schemes, and hence their impacts in terms of environmental damages or environmental impacts are relatively low. Hence, some acceptability, I would like to say, in India, for example, in India, up to 25 megawatt projects are exempted from small for environmental impact study. So for that matter, it is more environmentally acceptable because their impact are relatively very small and they are not visible. But large scale are much visible. That's it.
No, thank you, Kumar. And I think that also brings us to the end of the session. I would like to thank this very distinguished panel of specialists in the hydropower sector who make huge contribution to moving our sector forward. Thank you for your inputs. Thank you for everybody that attended. It's always feel we can spend another half a day discussing these matters, but we've only got an hour time slot. So with that, and also from my side, I look forward to working with all of you on the panel and of our people attending in promoting and expanding and extending the impact, that's positive impact that small hydro can do. Thank you very much.